So at this point, and again, this is where the order of the sequence of events is going to get a little messy. So this is the part that I start getting like, this is the part where I'm kind of like somewhat uncomfortable because I fully own that I made like massive mistakes from the get-go. I'll lay out.
But hold on, if you thought you would get 22 Bitcoin, you would have done things differently. Don't beat yourself up about this.
Yeah, but I mean, as a good Bitcoiner, you should observe best practices.
Of course, but then there's a rush. You're doing it quickly. You know, I've raised money before and just had a single address and you just
yeah. It was a shitty situation, is what I'm getting at, and I hope that everybody kind of watched and will do better moving forward. And I'll give my thoughts on like the ideal, raising money in an adversarial situation, the kind of flow would be now. But outside of that, there was, and again, this is the part where I'm going to be weird about talking about it, but JW is somebody on Twitter.
Chewy.
Yeah. So in the midst of kind of the panic of what was happening with how quickly things were growing, and the legal uncertainty around everything, somewhere in there, and this is where the sequence is totally a blur to me because I was not doing all right, but we started getting legal threats from JW on Twitter saying, because I had done a podcast with Nick and I think Greg and BJ, and we were talking about, this amount of money came in, and there had been discussion of like, okay, what's actually needed? Well, there's lots of food there, there's lots of gas there, so on and so forth. But the topic came up like, hey, a lot of these guys are getting fines. They may have been charged with various things. Perhaps one idea is having like a legal war chest, to help them out with that kind of stuff. I guess that idea that was floated was not, JW wasn't a fan of that.
What's it got to do with him?
He donated. So
and under what conditions?
Well, I don't know. The thing was called Bitcoin for Truckers, and so he interpreted it as
truckers.
Well, this is so. What I will say is, so he effectively said, if this money is not handed directly to individual truckers by the conclusion of the protest, I will sue BTC Sessions, and listed a few names.
Why? Whenever his name comes up, it's always for something where he's being a piece of shit. Every fucking time. I mean, I've had him blocked for years because he's a fucking moron. But like every single time, he is being a piece of shit.
So what I'll say is, I don't want to sit here and like disparage him as much as
I do.
Okay, fair. Okay, so
Fuck him.
So all I'm gonna say is, I given the stress, I really didn't appreciate having that extra shit like dumped in my lap.
Okay, sorry, very quickly. You don't have to tell me the answer to this, but do you know how much he donated?
I have no idea. What happened was, as soon as he tweeted that, I said, "Hey man, would you like your money back? We will happily send it back." He refused to reply to that.
Because it was probably like I don't know, $500 a Bitcoin.
Yeah. So nonetheless, what I will say, and this is where I'm going to basically concede that action did contribute to a quicker movement of funds that then got into the hands of the truckers. Again, I'm totally fuzzy on the order of
that's fine
when things
anyway,
happen.
So some of the Bitcoin starts reaching the truckers?
So yes, effectively what happened is there was an effort, and at this point I'm no longer a custodian. We had begun to move funds out of one multi-sig into another. And so at that point, I believe JW, a number of others, had begun to basically figure out, okay, well, how can we actually put together packages? I actually think the packages that were put together worked great. And again, I will concede that the prodding to move forward quicker, in the end, actually was a positive thing, and I'll tell you why in a second. But so there were packages that went out to individual truckers, effectively like, hey, this is a preloaded seed phrase. Here's how to load it up into Blue Wallet and send it into another wallet that you yourself own. Just like, I think there's like $8,000 of Bitcoin on it for each trucker. And
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was like a sizable amount because I mean, there's a lot of money there. And so it was just going out and being handed, and like some of the like, there's some girl that cried, and like, it was like,
how would you know who to give it to and someone's not received twice and someone's not been missed out?
I believe that on the ground they were kind of trying to make like a list of like, they were talking to people in advance, like, hey, if we get donations, can we bring some to you? And so it basically went something along those lines. But I wasn't there, so I'm not super privy to that part of it. Nonetheless, the part where it got stuck, and the part where the early mistakes of me doing the tally coin with the static address and it not having been obfuscated in some way, this is where it started to catch up with us, because as we went to move it out of the initial multisig so that it could then be in a place where they could easily create those packages, there was a bug in the multisig software we're using. So, and I'll say that the software is fantastic. They worked it out, but it's just nobody was prepared to be like, even the software that we were using was ill prepared for this kind of a test. It's since been hardened, I will say. But we're using Nunchuck Wallet, and the guys at Nunchuck are fucking legends. Their responses during this were incredible.
Big up Nunchuck.
Yeah, indeed. But nonetheless, so the way that Nunchuck works is you have a bunch of people that have keys, and you need X number of keys to approve a transaction. There's an encrypted chat where if you want to start a transaction, you basically propose it into that encrypted chat. People see it as a message. You can click on it and then sign with the key that you have. So it makes remote coordination super easy. However, at the time, we encountered a bug where you would propose a transaction and it would show for you in the chat, but it wouldn't be relayed to the other members. So there was no opportunity to attach a signature. So a handful of Bitcoin, around 30% of it, kind of got stuck as these packages were being made. And so what ended up happening, again, this is where it's kind of fuzzy, but 70% of all the Bitcoin was handed to individual truckers. And I will note that it was the only online donations out of all of it, GiveSendGo, GoFundMe, and Bitcoin, the only donations that actually made it to the intended recipients.
Before we get onto this, the other 30%, how did the truckers know what to do with the Bitcoin? Did they get it to exchange? Could they sell it? Were the exchanges then put under pressure?
So there were basically instructions of a variety of different ways you can utilize Bitcoin to purchase things, to exchange for dollars, so on and so forth. Yeah, but it basically walked it through, and it was I read through it. It was pretty good instructions, I'll say. So
was there any pressure put on the exchanges like on GoFundMe?
Yes.
There was. Okay.
Yeah. So this is where I would say the failings of the initial setup really came to light. So because it was all donated through a single static address, trivial to see exactly what was coming in, where it was coming from, and where it went afterwards. You have a starting point to say, all right, just start here, and then we see where it goes. And so the exchanges were effectively just sent a list of individual addresses that just said, don't accept Bitcoin from these addresses, or freeze it when it gets there if it comes from this address. So at this point, and I don't know, my understanding is there was no instruction on like, look back in the chain to see if it at some point went to these addresses or so on and so forth. So my understanding is that the exchanges were effectively saying, okay, we'll look for this individual address if it came from that one. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So at that point, there's this 30% that we're kind of finicking. The Nunchuck guys were helping trying to extract that from the multi-sig. And unfortunately, I think it resulted in a situation where the credentials to move that Bitcoin were in too centralized a place. And at that point, there was, it was removed from the custody of the key holder.
Fine. So can I say what that is? Or because I know what happened.
Yeah.
So that was when the police basically raided his house?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, raided Caribou's house, threatened him.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
he did what probably most people had to do. I felt so sorry for him at that time.
He messaged me the second they left.
Yeah.
And not only did I feel horrible, but I was mortified. I was so scared. He messaged me and he said, "Hey man, I'm on a backup phone. Just so you know, police just raided my house and they literally took everything. I just wanted to give you a heads up." And I'm thinking, is that about to happen to me? Is somebody about to come kick in my door? My daughter is here. I'm sitting here with my family. We were about to actually leave. We were going down to, I was going to go see, going on like
big old trip.
Yeah, we were going to Costa Rica, actually. It had been planned well before any of this stuff had started. But I'm thinking
do we get stopped at the airport?
Yeah, and I'm thinking what are they going to come to my house? I don't know. It's and this, all of the stuff that we've been talking about, this happened in 2 weeks. And I'm sitting there going, well, if it's gone this far in 2 weeks, what's another week? How different could it be from that? How much worse could it get? And so I'm running through scenarios in my head where I'm just not ready for this to happen to me. And so I go out to my wife and I say that this is a situation.
Let's get the fuck out of it.
That's what I said. I said, maybe we should go and stay in a hotel somewhere for a couple nights before we fly out, and we'll see what happens. So I'm sitting in this hotel and I'm thinking
you're a fugitive.
I technically wasn't, but
I know what you mean.
That's what I felt. And then I'm thinking are they going to let me on this plane? And then I'm thinking, if I get on this plane, there's a possibility I might not be able to come back. All of this is going through my head, and it was stressful as fuck.
But listen, you did a good thing. You should not beat yourself up about anything. It was a fast moving situation. I don't know. Well, we all tend to see our social media world differently. I don't know what people said to you. I didn't see anything from anyone I respect say anything negative. So
I think I just take it to heart because I know I could have done better. I know, and you know what I'd love to tell you right now, and maybe this will be used by others, but what I would have done differently.
Well, we will get to that.
Okay.
What about the subsequent litigation? Can that be talked about? Is that over?
No, but
Okay.
I can. I'm not super well versed in exactly what's going on, but
You're not being litigated against.
there's a footnote where they list potential custodians.
Okay.
And my understanding is that's just kind of a throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. By the time that litigation happened, I was not a custodian, so I don't know exactly. Yeah. Nonetheless, so there's a lawsuit that was launched on behalf of, I think, 2 individuals and a company in Ottawa that were suing the convoy organizers for disrupting their businesses and their lives during the protest, which I found a little bit rich, given that all the protesters
They probably
were
got
there.
loads of business, didn't they?
No, I think they did have to shut down a ton of shit. But some stayed open. They did.
Some probably did very well.
Yeah, probably. But nonetheless, yeah, a lot of people's lives were disrupted for a few weeks. But the thing that I found rich that kind of pissed me off was the people that were there protesting were there because their lives were fully disrupted to the point where they had no jobs, no way to pay their mortgages, and they could not leave the country if they didn't like it.
Yeah. On reflection, did the protesters get anything wrong where maybe they could have had more support from the public, or was it purely the work of the government and the mainstream media that turned them against them and couldn't have done it anyway?
I mean, there's probably instances of individuals that did shitty things. I think some of the border blockade stuff was definitely like front and center. However, that was resolved with regular law enforcement before the Emergencies Act.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. But nonetheless, that 30% of the Bitcoin is now sitting in a legal limbo because of something called the Mariva injunction, which basically says that this class action lawsuit, it encapsulates every bit of like all the assets that have to do with something are, I think, effectively must be locked in place until the resolution of the lawsuit. So I think that's kind of where it stands. I don't know.